Breaking news, 25 billion spent. The clock just expired and he said we might restart it. I want to give you four numbers that belong together. $25 billion. That is what the Pentagon confirmed this week. The Iran war has cost the American taxpayer in 62 days. The acting Pentagon comptroller Jules Hurst told Congress directly, approximately as of this day, we are spending about $25 billion on Operation Epic Fury. He said most of those costs came from munitions. Weapons fired at Iran, $4.30. That is what a gallon of regular gasoline costs in the United States today, according to AAA. That is the highest it has been since this war began. It was $3.19 the week before February 28th, 60 days. That is the limit the War Powers Resolution gives any American president to use military force without congressional authorization. Today, May 1st, is that day. The 60-day clock has expired. And this. Trump told CNN's Caitlin Collins on Wednesday that he might need to restart the war with Iran. He said, quote, we might need to do it. $25 billion spent. Gas at 4:30. The legal deadline expired today, and the president is talking about restarting a war that is technically in ceasefire. Let me explain what happened in Washington this week. What the Senate did when it had the chance to stop this war, what Hegseth said when he was asked when it would end, what Putin said when he called Trump for 90 minutes, and what the sentence we might need to restart, it actually means coming from a president on the day his legal authority to fight it expires. Every fact comes from NBC News, NPR, CNN, Al Jazeera, and official congressional testimony, all confirmed, all from the last 48 hours. Let us go. Start with the $25 billion, because that number came out of a congressional hearing that nobody is fully explaining, and it deserves careful attention. On Wednesday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth testified before the House Armed Services Committee. The hearing was scheduled to discuss next year's Pentagon budget. Trump is asking for $1.5 trillion, up from roughly $1 trillion this year. The Iran war dominated the hearing entirely. Congressman Adam Smith, the top Democrat on the committee, opened by pointing out that the Pentagon had not updated Congress on the cost of the war since it began. He asked whether the Defense Department plans to ask Congress for supplemental funding. Acting Comptroller Jules Hurst confirmed the $25 billion figure. He said the main expense was weapons fired at Iran, munitions. He said the money came from funds already allocated to the department. Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander responded with a sentence that captures the hearing precisely. She said, we are 60 days into your war of choice in Iran, and you cannot give us an answer on the basic breakdown of American taxpayer dollars that have been spent. Your war of choice. That phrase went mostly unreported. A Democratic congresswoman called this, directly to Hegseth's face, a war of choice. Not a war of necessity, not a war of self-defense, a choice. Hegseth responded by describing the operation as a major success. He said Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated. He said the stockpiles of highly enriched uranium are believed to be buried underground due to U.S. airstrikes last June. He said 13,000 targets in Iran have been hit before the ceasefire. He said the war was worth every dollar. Then Smith pointed out the contradiction at the center of Hegseth's own argument. He said the Trump administration launched this war 2 months ago, saying an Iranian nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you are saying it is completely obliterated. Hegseth responded, Iran had not given up their nuclear ambitions. When asked when the war would end, NPR noted that Hegseth offered no indication, zero, no timeline, no conditions. No definition of what success looks like. The war that was supposed to last 4 weeks, that cost $25 billion in 8 weeks, has no stated end date. Now, the War Powers Act, because today is the day. The War Powers Resolution was passed in 1973 after Vietnam. It says a president can use military force without congressional authorization for 60 days. After 60 days, the president must either request authorization from Congress or withdraw the forces. Congress can also vote to force a withdrawal. Today is day 62. The 60-day clock, depending on how you count it, has either already expired or expires today. There is confusion in Congress about the exact date. Some lawmakers say the clock started February 28th when hostilities began, making the deadline April 29th. Others cite the official White House notification to Congress, putting the deadline at May 1st. Republicans are arguing that ceasefire days do not count. or that Trump can unilaterally extend to 90 days. What happened in the Senate this week tells you everything you need to know about whether Congress will actually stop this war. The Senate voted on a war powers resolution that would have required Trump to end military operations against Iran within 30 days, unless Congress formally authorized the war. The vote failed. It was defeated along largely party lines. Republicans voted to let the war continue without congressional authorization. One Republican senator, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, broke with her party to support the resolution. She said, "The 60-day clock has run. The president should come to Congress," one Republican out of 53. The rest voted to let Trump continue a war that has cost $25 billion, that has no end date, that has gas at 4:30, and that the president is now saying he might need to restart. The House had an earlier vote on a similar resolution that failed by a single vote. One vote. In both chambers, the effort to invoke the War Powers Act has come within one or two votes of passing and failed each time. This is the closest Congress has come to stopping a presidential war since the 1970s, and it keeps falling short. Now, the Putin call. Because what happened on Wednesday between Washington and Moscow is one of the most consequential diplomatic phone calls of this entire war. And it was reported in 2 paragraphs buried under the hearing coverage. Putin called Trump. Russia initiated the call. It lasted 1.5 hours. The Kremlin spokesperson Yuri Ushakov confirmed the details publicly. What Putin said about Iran, he told Trump that extending the ceasefire was the correct decision and that it should provide an opportunity for negotiations. He also said something far more pointed. He warned of inevitable, extremely dire consequences, not only for Iran and its neighbors, but for the entire international community if the US and Israel resort to force again. Putin, in a direct call with Trump, warned him not to restart the war. What Putin said about Ukraine, he raised the possibility of a ceasefire in Ukraine to coincide with Victory Day on May 9th. Russia celebrates May 9th as the anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Putin proposing a May 9th Ukraine ceasefire is politically significant inside Russia. He would be framing it as a peace gesture tied to the most sacred date in the Russian calendar. What Trump said about both wars immediately after the call, he told CNN's Caitlin Collins that the wars in Iran and Ukraine could end on a similar timetable. He said which war would end first. Maybe they are on a similar timetable. He then said something confusing. He said, "I think Ukraine militarily they are defeated," and appeared to have meant to say Iran. He then described Iran not having a navy, no air force, no anti-aircraft apparatus, apparently suggesting military defeat. And then on the same day, separately, Trump told reporters, "We might need to do it," referring to restarting the war with Iran. One sentence to a reporter about possibly restarting a war. The day after a 90-minute call with Putin in which Putin warned of dire consequences if the US resorts to force again. On the same day, the war powers clock expired, with gas at 4:30 and $25 billion already spent. Let me tell you what the Iran side of this looks like today. Because while Washington was having its hearing and its Senate vote and its Putin call, Tehran was not quiet. Iran's President Pezeshkian posted in English on X. He said, "What is being done under the guise of a naval blockade is an extension of military operations against a nation paying the price for its resistance and independence." He called it intolerable. Iran's government offices across the country have been ordered to cut electricity use by up to 70% after 1 p.m. Households are being offered discounts on electricity bills to reduce consumption. This is a wartime rationing measure. 62 days into the conflict, Iran is managing electricity as a scarce resource. The Quincy Institute's Hadi Khalilzadeh told CNN that the disruption to shipping and imports has placed 50% of Iranian jobs at risk and pushed an additional 5% of the population into poverty. Before this war started, Iran's income per person had already fallen from $8,000 in 2012 to $5,000 in 2024, 12 years of decline. And now this. And yet Iran is still not calling America. Trump said they should use the phone. Iran's foreign minister spent 20 hours in Islamabad, flew to Moscow, and is now back in Tehran. The phone is not ringing. There is also the Iran World Cup angle that I need to address because it shows how far this war has spread into everyday life at a global level. FIFA President Gianni Infantino confirmed that Iran will compete at the 2026 FIFA World Cup and play matches in the United States despite the ongoing war. This confirmation was necessary because there had been serious questions about whether Iran could travel to America, whether American authorities would grant visas, and whether Iranian athletes could compete in a country that is simultaneously at war with their country. Infantino said he has reaffirmed Iran's participation. Iran's athletes will come to the United States this summer. The country that is blockading Iran's ports will host Iran's soccer players in its stadiums. That single fact captures something about the nature of this conflict that policy analysis cannot fully communicate. A war with no end date, no defined victory condition, no congressional authorization, costing $25 billion and rising. And the country fighting that war will this summer welcome the athletes of the country it is fighting into its cities, into its stadiums, in front of its cameras, in front of the world. Let me bring the full picture together for you, because on May 1st, day 62, the situation is specific, and it matters to be precise about what it is. The war has cost $25 billion confirmed by the Pentagon's own comptroller under oath. The ceasefire is technically still in effect, now in its fourth week. The blockade is active, but Iran called it intolerable military action today. The war powers clock has expired, and the Senate voted to let Trump continue without authorization. Trump said we might need to restart the war. Putin warned him directly of dire consequences if he does. Gas is at 4:30, highest since the war began. Iran is rationing electricity. Half of Iranian jobs are at risk. The Senate was one Republican vote away from forcing Trump to end the war. And Hegseth cannot say when it will be over. There is one more detail that appeared in the CNN hearing coverage that I want to leave with you because it has received almost no attention. Several U.S. officials and congressional aides told NBC News earlier this month that Iran has damaged American military bases and equipment in the Middle East far worse than publicly acknowledged, and that the damage could lead to billions of dollars in repairs. The $25 billion figure for Operation Epic Fury covers the cost of American munitions and operations. It does not include the cost of repairing the damage Iran inflicted on American bases and equipment. That bill has not been disclosed. A Democratic congresswoman asked about it directly. The Pentagon said it would provide a breakdown later. $25 billion to fight. An unknown additional sum to repair. No end date. Gas at 4:30. War powers clock expired. Senate voted yes, keep going. And Trump said we might need to restart it. That is day 62. 3 questions for the comments. The first, the Senate voted to let Trump continue the Iran war without congressional authorization, even as the 60-day war powers clock expired. 1 Republican voted to stop it. The House failed by 1 vote. A Democratic congresswoman called it a war of choice to Hegseth's face. If Congress will not invoke the War Powers Act, even when gas is at 4:30 and the war has cost $25 billion with no end date, under what conditions would Congress ever vote to stop a presidential war? Does the War Powers Resolution still mean anything? The second, Trump told CNN we might need to restart the war with Iran on the same day Putin called him for 90 minutes and warned of dire consequences if the U.S. and Israel resort to force again. Putin also proposed a May 9th ceasefire in Ukraine on the same call. Trump said both wars might end on a similar timetable. Iran's president called the blockade intolerable. Pakistan's mediators are waiting for a revised Iranian proposal. If Trump restarts the war before a deal is reached, what happens to the blockade, the strait, oil prices, and the global economy that has been holding its breath for 62 days? The third, the Pentagon spent $25 billion in 62 days on Operation Epic Fury. Most of it was weapons fired at Iran. Iran has 13,000 of its targets destroyed, and yet the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Gas is still at 430. Iran is still negotiating on its own terms. Iran still has not called Trump, and Hegseth cannot say when the war ends. Was $25 billion worth it? And what does the answer to that question tell you about every war America has started in the last 25 years? Drop your answer below. A, B, or C, or your own words. If this connected something for you today, share it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. The clock expired today. The Senate said keep going. Trump said we might restart it. Putin said do not, and the phone is still not ringing. We will be here when it does.